Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Minh and I'm your co-host with Debbie from Ndis Property Australia, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast. Australia explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing Ndis world. Debbie, hello.
Hello, Minh.
Today we have breaking news. The 16th of September, we have an announcement from the Minister, Bill Shorten, for the NDIS. Debbie, what is this article all about?
The media release is stronger registration to begin for the NDIS sector.
I think if you can read most of the comments in here, we'll be able to go into more.
Will I start with the actual media?
Yeah, sure.
So, the Albanese government is progressing a new registration system for the NDIS that will better support participants through stronger regulation of providers. Now, just as a bit of backstory here, this has come out of one of the recommendations from the NDIS review last year that providers should be registered. And we know that of the roughly how many providers out there, Minh?
I think 160,000 plus, I think.
Only about
14,000 or 13,000 are registered.
So we're talking about the vast majority of providers for the NDIS are not registered.
90% are not registered.
Now, I just want to note at this point that there are 36 different registration groups that a provider can be. And a lot of these registration groups are for maybe non-services or services that may actually not have a lot to do with direct interaction with NDIS participants. It might be, for example, providing vehicle modifications or home modifications or assistance animals. So those sorts of registration groups are not being affected, but the important providers who do deal directly with participants on a day-to-day basis, that is really what we're looking at here. And obviously this has come out of the need to reduce complaints and reportable incidents that have increased significantly over the last few years within the NDIS. So, back to the media release. The NDIS Provider and Worker Registration Task Force recently provided advice to the government on design and implementation of a new regulatory model. The task force, led by prominent human rights lawyer Natalie Wade, was established in February 2024 to provide independent advice on the design and implementation of the new graduated risk proportionate regulatory model proposed in the NDIS review. Task Force made 11 recommendations and 10 implementation actions covering provider and worker registration, some of which required an immediate response and others will be designed with close consultation with the disability community. The Task Force conducted thorough consultation, and this important process will continue. As an immediate response, the Albanese government will now require all platform providers, support coordinators and supported independent living or SIL providers to be registered. Minister for the NDIS and Government Services Bill Shorten MP said registration for these providers and coordinators was recommended by the task force to strengthen safeguards for NDIS participants. The task force made several recommendations on a new regulatory model that will require co-design with the disability community, including mandatory registration for platform and SIL providers and support coordinators as our first change, Minister Shorten said. Though the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission and under the current registration model, I'm progressing registration of platform providers, that is, providers that connect participants with workers to deliver NDIS supports, support coordinators and providers of supported independent living. The Commission will progress rule changes to mandate registration for support coordination, platform providers and SIL. Consultation on these changes will commence in October. The new rules will allow for a period of transition to a new mandatory registration arrangements. Albanese government will also shortly commence consultation with the disability community on some of the design elements of a new regulatory model. This includes the registration approach and the NDIS practice standards for SIL providers, Minister Shorten said. I'm not sure if there's much more in there specifically relevant covering what we've already said, but basically, 3 registration groups out of 36 now need to be registered. I just want to note here that up until now, providers providing specialist disability accommodation, which is obviously what we are more focused with in general here, have always had to be registered. There's another registration group that also, I believe, has always had to be registered. I thought it was support coordination, but I obviously am wrong because they are now saying that support coordination needs to be registered now. So we're not talking about every single provider of supports or services, but these are major ones.
Yeah. So a few comments here I'm seeing on LinkedIn here, Debbie. Someone said here, baby steps, I guess, but disappointed that the most important bit is missing. That is, support coordinators cannot also be service providers. Out of 4,700 active registered support coordinators per the NDS provider finder, only 300 are unconflicted. So, yeah, what do you think, Debbie? Is there a time frame to see all this rolled out, do you think?
At the moment, we know that you submit your registration application to become a registered provider. It can take 2 years, and I believe there's something else here I've just been reading. It's $12,000 to become a registered provider, and I think that's a starting point, which doesn't include the cost of auditors and everything else that you need to do to get all the documentation and practices and processes in place to actually get your provider registration. So for a lot of smaller organisations or smaller businesses that are currently providing SIL, it's just not going to be possible for them to do this. So I gathered from this that they are looking at amending the registration process. So it's going to have to be amended quite significantly to enable all of those businesses currently operating as SIL to get their provider registration license in a very timely manner and one that is affordable to a small business.
This is a step in the right direction, yes, I agree. Because I read a comment somewhere online about 6 months ago, and that was, why should registered providers who adhere to the rules of the NDIS, follow compliance and do the right thing, get paid the exact same amount of money as a unregistered provider who doesn't have to comply with those rules? It's unfair the way they see it. And rightly so, they should all be registered. And this is a step in the right direction whereby in the coming years, we'll see more and more, less people coming into the industry thinking they'll run a sustainable long-term business without a license, registration for the NDIS as a service provider. I want to read a comment that someone made on LinkedIn here. I just read someone's about response to the article by Bill Shorten. Let me read this. Renee, who made this comment. The contradictions in Bill Shorten's press release emphasises the need for stronger regulation and mandatory registration to address safety concerns in the NDIS. Yet it proposes to do more of what has already failed to prevent tragedies like Anne Marie Smith's case. Mere registration doesn't prevent abuse or neglect. Her care provider was registered, yet the FIS system failed her. Proposing more mandatory registration without addressing the root cause of these failures seems like a superficial fix rather than a meaningful reform. $12,000 registration cost is a significant barrier for smaller, specialised providers. Push for more regulation seems to contradict the NDIS's foundational principles of choice and control. By mandating registration and increasing oversight without improving the quality of care or offering better support mechanisms, the government risks undermining the autonomy of participants. Government solutions seems to be adding more layers of the same broken system rather than addressing systematic issues like lack of accountability, training, and real participant empowerment. The essential flaw in their approach, doubling down on a failed system rather than making transformative, participant-centered changes.
Similar thoughts in a post here that I found on LinkedIn by Dr. George Talaporis, who is a very well-known disability sector leader, disabled gentleman himself. He has, a couple of hours ago, put out here, check out Samantha Connor's analysis following today's announcement of provider registration. Just pick out a few things here. Registration is often reduced to a box-ticking exercise that fails to address the root causes of neglect and abuse in the disability sector. Moreover, the cost of registration, a staggering $12,000, creates a significant barrier for smaller providers and individual practitioners. This financial burden is likely to force many quality providers out of the market, particularly those offering specialised or niche services that are essential for many participants. It goes on to loss of choice and control. As the NDIS was founded on the principles of choice and control for participants, the push for mandatory registration directly contradicts these foundational values. By potentially forcing smaller, more specialised providers out of the market, participants are left with fewer options to meet their unique needs. This is particularly concerning for those in rural and remote areas where service options are already limited. And this goes on to an interesting comment here, the hidden agenda, big providers and block funding. Critics argue that the drive for mandatory registration is less about participant safety, more about satisfying the demands of large service providers and unions. Look, there's a lot of positives and negatives, comments coming out of this, and there will be, I guess, for some time, but it's certainly raising some interesting questions. Another one that I've seen, I think it all came out in a few of those comments on the original media release too, was that back in November in the NDIS review, it was recommended that support coordinators be phased out and replaced with navigators. Now they want support coordinators to be registered. It's another contradiction.
Registered to then become navigators? Is that
I don't
the way
know.
I see it?
Yep.
But Debbie, with the original purpose of this document being registration required moving forwards for platform providers, support coordinators and SIL providers, for those who are wondering what a platform provider is, if you heard of the word Higher Up or Mabel, right? They are online platforms which allows the linking of between support workers who are hired as consultants or employees on the platform with participants on their platform. So, for example, I did a podcast interview with a young lady about a year ago, Lowry Williams, I think. We were talking about the Higher Up platform. There was about 8,000 participants on their system and about 8,000 support workers on that system.
Independence.
Yeah, and that allows the participants to choose who they want from a care service point of view. Now, Higher Up, I believe, is a licensed registered provider, and that's what this announcement is all about. The online businesses like them should be and must be licensed because they're holding a lot of power, but holding a lot of control in terms of support services allowed or provided to these participants to be chosen from. And then there should be an element of care and registration. Accountability, yeah. So I guess this announcement is good in a way. It's showing that there's changes being made, and we knew that a year ago that over the coming 4 or 5 years coming up, that we'll see more and more of these changes rolled out and go from there, basically. I mean, but at the end of the day, Debbie, we think about it, support coordinators, online platforms, and SIL providers. They are the majority of
there's certainly
the services provided out there.
A large number of the providers out there. So it's not all providers, full stop. It is really just those that are more involved in working directly with the participants, providing care to the participants, assisting them with their plans, with their supports. And I guess that is where the majority of potential incidents can happen and complaints come out from participants. So look, it's definitely probably a move, but a good move. They're going to need to really figure out how to do this in a different way because current registration is just way too long and costly. So if they can pull that back and find a way of creating provider registration platform that makes it accessible to all those much smaller, more niche providers, then hopefully this is a good thing. Whether it fixes all the problems, I don't know.
I want to read a few more comments in response to this LinkedIn post from Dr. George Kane. He says, this is a good clarification from Dr. George. At least when I was with the agency, the NDIS agency, it was already mandatory for all those types of providers to be registered. I was dismayed to see that we'd moved away from that. Having unregistered SIL providers was quite bizarre, really. So good that it's getting back to what it was always meant to be and not really a change. And in response, Shirley, another person, says online here, that would make sense if registration equals protection. The Royal Commission has shown it does not. This looks rushed again when the Commission does not cope with the workload they have. The real harm will come the supports leaving the sector if it is plain too hard. Mike, who also says, long overdue, hopefully not some watered down version. Another occupational therapist named Hillary says, registration does not stop dodgy providers. Plenty of dodgy registered ones already. So, look, we just wanted to bring to light some of the posts, the announcement, the comments that people are chatting about online regarding this announcement from the Ministerial's office, and just give you guys up to date with regards to changes to what we see on the fringe of SDA, because really this topic here is about SIL and services, not about SDA.
But SIL and SDA go hand to hand.
Yeah, it doesn't impact upon the SDA world as well, because without the SIL providers providing the care, it doesn't really make it an efficient model for our carers to give their supports to our SDA participants in these homes. Debbie, any last words about this and future changes coming up? Yes?
I guess everything's a little bit up in the air when it comes to some of the recommendations from the review. And we know that a couple of weeks ago, Bill Shorten announced his resignation from government. It'll take place by February next year. Yeah, look, maybe there is a bit of rushing things through. I like that they are still saying there's going to be co-consultation with the disability community, most important. Look, there's a lot of negativity out here, as there always is when anything comes out from the government in terms of changing services and legislation. But they've got to start somewhere. And I think that this is a needed move. Let's hope that they get it right first time.
I just want to correction there, Debbie. Bill Shorten announced his retirement from politics.
Sorry, yes, retirement, not resignation.
A retirement, because resignation sometimes infers giving up on task at hand. I think he has served the political world in Australia quite well the last few decades, and he's moving on to a university position. I think it's Chancellor in a Canberra university. Yeah, so that'll be his final gig before he retires, I assume. But we wish him all the best. I mean, there's both positive and negative views on how he's done in the NDIS for the last few years. But hopefully that the changes moving forwards and the new stewards who will take over his role in the coming year or so, 6 months, will be as passionate and driven on his or her position within the NDIS moving forwards. Yeah.
Indeed.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And we look forward to, by the way, one last plug. We have a masterclass coming up soon.
Oh, the masterclass. Yeah. We're getting very excited. It's, I think, 17 days away. So, yes, 25 guest speakers, 25 plus guest speakers from around the country, breakout rooms. It'll be an all-day event online on Zoom. You can log in and out as you wish to meet up with who you wish. It's going to be an amazing event to learn everything you want to know about SDA. So, yeah, make sure to register for that. You'll get information a little closer to the time on who's going to be speaking when and how to actually connect with them.
It'll be a free event, so it'll be exciting. And we have about 480 registrants already, and another forecast we'll have about 600 registered by the next 2 weeks. And hopefully we have a wonderful show-up rate and people to listen and hear and see and engage everything SDA on that day, the whole day event. Yeah. Thank you very much, Debbie. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.